Located in Hillside, Illinois, Mount Carmel is a massive Catholic cemetery with over 200,000 burials and 400 family mausoleums of all shapes and sizes. The unique cemetery is jam-packed with enormous monuments, lifelike statues, and thousands of fascinating graves with porcelain photographs of the deceased. But out of all of the photographs at Mount Carmel Cemetery, one in particular really stands out from the rest. Near the cemetery's entrance, the grave of Julia Buccola displays a post-mortem picture of the young woman lying in an open casket at the gravesite. The unusual image makes many people wonder why the casket was open and why the deceased woman was photographed. Join me as I uncover the sad and chilling story of Julia Buccola and the bizarre event that led to the haunting photograph displayed at her monument. Like most of the people buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery, the young woman laid to rest beneath the statue was Italian, and in 1913 she emigrated from Palermo, Italy to New York with her widow mother Filomena. After arriving in New York, Julia and Filomena moved to Chicago to live with Julia's brothers Henry and Joseph, who were successful clothing designers. The Buccola family lived in an apartment on West Erie Street in the neighborhood that is now known as the Ukrainian Village. Not long after moving to Chicago, Julia met a man named Matthew Petta, and in the summer of 1920, the two tied the knot and got married at the Holy Rosary Parish on Western Avenue in Chicago. Shortly after the wedding, the newlyweds got an apartment together on West Huron Street and were expecting their first child, but sadly, less than 1 year later, fate would intervene. Only 9 months after the wedding, Julia suffered a high fever and complications while giving birth to a stillborn child and passed away at the young age of 29. Her mother, Filomena, along with her husband and the Buccola family, were devastated by the tragic loss of Julia and her infant son. In Italian tradition concerning mothers who died during childbirth, Julia was considered a martyr and buried in a white dress, with her wedding dress serving as her burial gown. Her infant son was also placed in the coffin alongside her. After the tragic death, Julia's grieving husband Matthew would eventually move on and marry another woman in 1925, 4 years after the loss of his wife and child. Julia's mother Filomena, on the other hand, was still devastated by the loss, and in 1926 she began having terrifying nightmares about her daughter. According to the eerie legend, Julia would frequently appear in Filomena's dreams, pleading over and over for her mother to exhume her body from the grave. It's unclear which version of the story is true to Filomena's nightmares, but one story says Julia begged Filomena to exhume her body because she was buried alive. After several months of ongoing nightmares and battling with cemetery officials about exhuming her daughter's body, Julia was finally disinterred in 1927, but when the casket was opened, the family wasn't expecting what they were about to see. After 6 long years of being buried underground, Julia's newborn was reduced to bones, but Julia looked as though she had been buried the day before and showed no signs of decomposition. Filomena was completely shocked by her daughter's immaculate appearance and snapped a famous photograph that can still be seen today at the monument. In the photograph, a fresh pile of dirt can be seen behind Julia's weathered coffin, indicating that she was in fact exhumed from the grave moments before the eerie picture was taken by her mother. After the casket was closed and buried again one final time, Filomena was convinced her daughter's condition meant she was a saint, and that ultimately became the inspiration for the $10,000 monument that was installed at the gravesite in 1928. In 1945, Filomena died and was buried in an unmarked grave only a few feet away from her daughter's massive monument, but that wasn't the end of the story. In the years following Julia Buccola's final burial, scary ghost stories began circulating in Hillside about a woman in a white dress who was seen roaming the cemetery, even during rainstorms. A 1978 newspaper article mentions a creepy story from the night of a school dance nearby. Multiple students at Proviso West High School, directly across the street from the cemetery, witnessed a woman in a wedding dress walking through the cemetery during a heavy storm, but strangely, the woman's dress appeared to be completely dry. The ghost sighting of the woman drew so many students and drivers to the cemetery's fence that it led to the school shutting down the dance that night. In another scary ghost story, a Chicago woman recalled an eerie event that occurred while visiting the cemetery with her parents as a child. The girl was helping plant flowers near a tombstone when her parents decided to go for a walk, leaving her alone at the gravesite, but knowing they would eventually return, she decided to lay down and take a nap. A short time later, she awoke from her nap, and when she opened her eyes, a woman in a wedding dress was standing over her. The mysterious woman extended her hand to help her up, but moments later the girl's parents were approaching, and when the girl looked away and then back at the woman, she was no longer there. The date of the alleged ghost sighting and whether or not the event occurred near the Buccola monument is unknown. There have also been numerous reports of floating lights near Julia Buccola's gravesite at night, and allegedly, some people have even reported seeing a glowing light coming directly from the monument itself. Many people who visit the Buccola monument have also noticed the smell of roses, even in the middle of winter when no flowers are present at the gravesite. But what's even more scary is the ghost story of Filomena's nightmares that led to her daughter's grave being exhumed in the first place. If the legends about Filomena's nightmares are true, then it suggests Julia really could have communicated with her mother from beyond the grave and convinced her to exhume her body, but for what reason? Was Julia Buccola really an incorruptible saint as the family believed, or was she buried alive? The mystery behind the fascinating photograph lives on, but some skeptics believe the perfect condition of Julia's corpse could really just boil down to nothing more than science instead of religion. Even though Julia's body appeared to be intact and was deemed incorruptible, the condition could have actually been caused by an accumulation of corpse wax, an organic substance formed by bacterial decomposition of body fats. The wax-like substance thrives in moist, humid environments without oxygen, such as an airtight coffin buried underground. The wax is also more likely to form on the corpse of a woman and can last for centuries if the burial conditions are right. Some skeptics also have doubts concerning the photograph itself. Although Julia's face does appear to be in relatively good condition after 6 years of burial, the black and white photo was taken from a distance and doesn't show what the corpse actually looked like up close. Others believe Julia was never exhumed at all and the photograph was taken on the day of her one and only burial, but relatives to the Buccola family have in fact confirmed the grave was disinterred in 1927 at the mother's request. Some legends claim that Filomena was haunted by nightmares of her daughter being buried alive, which eventually led to the grave being exhumed in 1927. However, it's unclear if Julia was actually buried alive in her coffin, and although it's certainly possible, there are no official records of it happening. In cases where people have been buried alive, the fabric inside the coffin is usually torn apart, and the body is often found upside down or laying on its side, but in the photograph, everything appears to be normal. The whole story of Julia Buccola is really interesting and makes me wonder, was all of this true? Was her daughter really, coming to her in her dreams and pleading to be exhumed? And what was the reason? Was she really a saint? Was she speaking to her mother from beyond the grave? We'll never know the answer to that, and all we can really go off of is that one photo and the legends. But if her body really was in this perfect state like her mother claimed, then I think it was more than likely the result of the corpse wax that I mentioned earlier, or something similar to that, because that is a real thing and bodies can be preserved for an extended period of time underground from that wax substance. It's really gross, but it's true. And so that could very well explain, why, when they opened the casket in 1927, why her daughter looked like she was buried the day before. And that might not even be the case, because all we can go off of is that one photo, which is black and white and taken from a distance, so you can't really see up-close details of the body. But her face does appear to be in good condition. However, if you look at one of her arms, it does appear to be kind of bloated looking, so it's hard to tell exactly the true condition of the body. But what do you think? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts about this story. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And check out more of my scary videos and playlists now.